Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to the Offsite Insight podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Creative Co-op. If you have any marketing or advertising needs, please reach out to Gino and the incredible team at tcco.ca. Today, I am so excited, privileged, and honored to have with us Honourable Andrea Khanjin, the MPP for Barrie-Innisfil, and also the Minister for Red Tape Reduction. Welcome, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've seen, different guests you've had in this room, and I was having one of those fear of missing out scenarios as a millennial, and so now I'm glad I'm here, and this is a great privilege, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I give you the opportunity to just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your story of getting into politics, and help us learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I got elected in 2018, but prior to that, I was raised here in Barrie, Ontario, so very much a product of this community. I immigrated to Barrie when I was 4 with my grandparents, and so we quickly learned how incredible the community this is. My grandma volunteered at the YMCA and quickly learned of all the different movers and shakers in town, which is really great for her because, she volunteered, obviously wanted to find employment, and wasn't one of those people who, ever wanted to go on social assistance, so was telling immigration, I really want my work visa, and she finally was able to get it. But that volunteer experience and the community really helped lift up my entire family. So I'm very much a product of this community. Ended up going to King Edward, Codrington, and Barrie Central Collegiate in terms of schools here. And so what's neat about entering, public service and public life, many years later from graduating is that sometimes when you're door knocking during an election, you door knock at the house of your former science teacher or your Latin teacher or somebody. And so that's really nice for me because it's just, I get to represent, a place where I grew up, which doesn't always happen for everyone because people move so much. And then they sometimes, they run for office in the last place they lived, right? Whereas I grew up here. So really lucky to get to represent the community. Never thought I would actually be the politician. Yeah. I was always the kind of like the policy person behind the scenes and helping, different candidates here locally on the municipal, provincial, and federal level. It came up, the opportunity. I thought I'd put my name forward and, here I am. And I've never looked back. It's been a privilege of a lifetime. Really love it. Haven't gotten tired of it yet. Yeah. Every day is so different. And I love just being results oriented. Because I think, growing up within politics, because it was always kind of a hobby of mine, is, you hear a lot of, great inspirational speeches and, that the art of rhetoric, what have you. And that's all great. And there comes a time, depending on where you are in society, you need to inspire people and lead. And we're going through, tough times now is no different. But then it's the results that you're measured on. And so what I love is I can look back from when I first got elected in 2018 and just say, here are the things I was able to deliver, working, with my team in Barrie to bring these investments home. I'm driving a Highway 400 and could say, these bridges or these off ramps and some of the cranes that we see up in the sky, the stuff that went into it. So I love it, and every day is different. There's always a lot of different competing priorities. But I think what you learn with time is to kind of, manage the work, and I can go to, 20,000 events in a day, but then you come home and you're like, well, what did I actually accomplish today? Yeah. Right. And so I like to think that I'm not a social media influencer. I'm a public servant there to deliver results. And so it's a trade-off, it's kind of the iceberg effect in this job where, people kind of see the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much that me and the team does behind the scenes. Yep. So behind every announcement, it's like the legwork to get the funding or the advocacy for a particular group. And so it's how I treat the job, is as much as I'm out there advocating and being visible in the community, it's also not forgetting about the real work behind the scenes.
That's fantastic. And I think it's awesome to hear that you were more on the policy side, before getting into office, because I think it's important to have that background to understand some of the issues that your now constituents are facing. So understanding the policy side behind it is really important.
Yeah, it helped me out in my first, I was able to hit the ground running in my first few years as some of my colleagues were kind of learning the ropes. I already knew the procedure and the regulatory framework. And so when it came to things like even, funding for Royal Victoria Hospital, just the process piece. Yeah. Health is such a huge portfolio.
Absolutely.
But in order to create a vibrant community, people rely on health services. So as much as, people say I want to raise my family in Barrie. Okay, well, sometimes your kids, they go to Snow Valley, and then unfortunately they break a leg and they need to get help, right? And so you want a place to go that's close. And also if you're, in a family planning mode and you want a place to have your children, right? So that infrastructure and the funding for that's important. And so just navigating that world of every year there's the operating funding, and then there's the little side things of all the different grants that are available. So kind of already knowing the landscape of, okay, here's where we apply for a PET CT scanner. This is how you apply for an MRI. Navigating that system. We're trying to connect more people to primary care. So just trying to it took me year after year working with a lovely lady I met in the community who was advocating for a nurse practitioner-led clinic.
Yeah.
And so it was just, working with them on this application, not giving up. And so even though I didn't get it in my first few years, I was able to get it in my next few years. And it's helped connect more people to primary care, which has been great. And then using the full scope of people's professional training, which is, they go to school to be a nurse and now they can do it all. Yeah. And that helps us in terms of a place where people want to, buy homes or set roots in a community. They're often looking for these additional amenities, right? So you don't just buy a home, you buy a whole community.
Absolutely.
So that's been, there's a lot more work always to be done, because otherwise, I wouldn't be running for re-election. Absolutely. But so far, it's been great to work with a lot of the community advocates here.
That's fantastic. And we've had a number of guests on the podcast so far that just kind of highlight how great of a community Simcoe County is, and how many people are willing to invest their time, their money, their influence, whatever they have for the greater good of our community. It's been really impactful for me just to see all the people, and you're a part of helping things get happening. So thank you for all your contributions on that. I mean, healthcare is something that, my wife is a nurse. I'm involved in a couple other committees, and we're in a housing crisis. That's part of it. Yes. And, but part of that is the community. And there's other parts and facets that we need to look and correct and shift to make sure people have homes and people have access to medical care, and access to that primary physician or nurse practitioner is really, really important as well. Shifting gears a little bit, Barrie and Innisfil are growing really fast, and they have now for several years. When I think of Innisfil, when I grew up, or when you grew up, it's a different place than it was then. So how do you balance the need for more housing, and while also protecting the community character and making sure the infrastructure, you'd already mentioned bridges and Highway 400, keeps up with that growth? Yeah, it's an excellent question, because that's it really paints the portrait of our growing population here. More people want to come to the Barrie and Simcoe County area, but our infrastructure has to keep up. So, whether it's expanding the footprint of our local hospital, growing the programming at Georgian College, the roads and bridges, but the stuff that really gets housing and projects off the ground is the underground infrastructure, pipes, sewer, clean water. And so this is something Premier Ford and our government recognized, that was tying up the land that we have, that we're really lucky. We have an abundance of land in Simcoe County, but you don't want to take it for granted. But a lot of that land is not serviced. And so what we heard a lot from municipalities, they say, okay, look, provincial government, you have these ambitious housing targets for us, because, housing prices are quite unattainable. Yep. A part of the solution to attainable home pricing is you build more, supply demand 101. But how can you create a home that's attainable if the price tag on it is unattainable? Yeah. And part of that is the servicing fees, right? So, if you look at, I don't know how much it is to hook up one individual home, if we can offset those costs onto the province, we will. And so we introduced a series of different infrastructure funds that help fund the water sewer extensions. And so Barrie benefited from one in the south end of Barrie, just on Mapleview Drive. Yep. And that was just before the last election. We announced that with Mayor Nuttall. But that would unlock, something like over, 1,100 houses. Wow. And so that we needed the underground infrastructure, we needed the road infrastructure to be able to literally pave the way to the homes. Yeah. But it wasn't just that; it was rewarding municipalities like Barrie. So say you reach your housing targets, we came out with a Build Back Faster fund, yep. Which then rewards as an incentive to municipalities to say, well, you've created more homes, which is good for supply. Now the province will write you a giant check, which is obviously taxpayer funded, yep. To help you with the infrastructure needs, right? And so whether that's expanding a water treatment plant, that's what it would be used towards. And that's separate from
other funding that we've announced that is for specific for like clean drinking water, resiliency, infrastructure. And that's also separate from a lot of the things we're doing to keep Lake Simcoe, clean, right? Because that's the other offset.
Certainly.
The jewel of our community. A lot of people come because they want to go from work to the lake, as the saying goes. And so if you want to do that, you want to be able to have a clean lake to go swimming in after with your kids, with your family members, etc. So all these different infrastructure pieces really, they blend together to create what that demand and that need was, which is, okay, if we want to build homes, we want to build a quality community, we got to get this the infrastructure piece right. And it has to be responsive to each community, because what works in Barrie, the funding needs that Barrie will have will be very different from like a London, Ontario, or Waterloo, or what have you, right? So, so our infrastructure buckets have been very catered to each individual community, and we've been working with those mayors and municipalities to say, tell us what your needs are, and then we'll release unleash the funds or create an infrastructure a bucket for you. So the infrastructure funding, let's say like Barrie applied for, was different from Innisfil, the other community I represent. And so, Innisfil got its infrastructure funding too to expand on housing there, but they're different types of communities. And that's where we said, one size isn't always going to fit all.
Yeah.
Let's do something that helps offset the cost of those homes. And so that's what we're looking to do. I mean, government shouldn't really be in the business of building homes per se,
right?
Because we saw historically what's happened with that, the upkeep of infrastructure and the cost associated with it. But you look at the great project of Youth Haven, no government involvement, all privately funded through donations and built within a year. Unbelievable. I think that's a product and a test case for government, right? And so, but government can help enable things like the underground infrastructure.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting approach that the province of Ontario has taken, is like, hey, look, we're not going to tell you what to do, but we're going to help support you for what you need in your community, versus us saying every community needs this, this, and this. It's like, you guys know better than what we do at the province, so help us understand what it is that you need. So what Barrie needs is different from what London needs, for what's different from Innisfil. It seems to be a great approach to make sure that we're not just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Let's solve the problems at a smaller scale across the province, which it's a tough thing to balance, right? Very cool. So local businesses right now are facing rising costs and labor challenges. What do you think the province is best doing right now to help small and mid-sized businesses stay competitive?
Yeah, another excellent question. And I think it builds off the, if you want to live somewhere, you need a place to also work. When I got elected in 2018, I like any person of a policy background, I started looking at Statistics Canada and our local labor market needs and our commuting data. And what I quickly discovered was over 80% of our population in Barrie-Innisfil commute to go to work. And so that means everyone's getting on Highway 400 to go to work. And what was correlating to that was it's the type of salary. So it was any salary over 100K often commuted. And so to me that said, well, what are we doing to bring those paychecks here locally? What are we doing to grow our local employment? As much as people live here, they also have to work here. So part of that, if I look back to my first initial days, it was working with Premier Ford and our government to do a reduction of the small business tax, which we did in our first few years. Haven't looked at it since, and obviously every year there's a budget that comes out, and small business communities are advocating for that. That's a big part of it. Another part of it is reducing, like say, red tape or the regulatory burden on our small businesses, so they can do what's best, which is managing their business, hiring people, etc. So we're often asking, small business communities at Ontario level, not just in Barrie and Innisfil and Simcoe County, but across, what can we do to make your paperwork or any government burden less for you?
Right.
And shopping around for those ideas constantly to reduce the burden. So we've been able to, help in that sense of, the government its job is to create the conditions for growth.
That's right.
We're not there to micromanage small businesses. So whatever we can do to get out of the way, we have. If there's more we can do, we will. And then it's also, talking about the economic conditions, with inflation being as high as it is, anything that we can do Ontario-wise to bring down costs will also help the businesses. Because, if you're, someone who wants to shop local, it comes at a bit of a premium. But if you have more money left over at the end of the day, then you'll be able to support local. And we saw that in the last 8 years, and more people wanting to shop local. You're seeing it again now with this whole Buy Ontario, Buy Canada thing. Sure. And the government, like Ontario, we're leading by example by saying we're changing all our procurement practices to ensure that it's made in Ontario first, not cheapest, because we want to be able to support our local economy. And so that translates down to every day, like if we can keep taxes low for people, we've never raised a tax, we've never raised a fee since we formed government. And the way we foresee that is like if more people have money in their pocket, they can help support their local business. So that's our approach. And, if there's anything that we can, take back from that is we're always listening to small businesses on what their needs are and how we can improve things. One takeaway, which we got, during the pandemic was some businesses had the bricks and mortar. They didn't have a digital footprint.
Right.
So Ontario worked with Digital Main Street to allow for a way for them to have an online shop. Right. And so, but they needed grant money for it. Yeah. And so this is where we got that idea from small businesses through different business improvement areas to come up with this concept. And so it helped a lot of businesses be able to sell their wares and get rid of that inventory they had, which they couldn't, get rid of before. And so they've a lot of, if you look at downtown Barrie, a lot of those businesses actually kept that platform, which is great. Yeah. So, it's innovation at its best, but it's another way that the provincial government is always looking for ways that what can you do to help, our small businesses thrive.
The continued theme of that idea, like, we don't necessarily know best. Help us understand what we can do to better serve our constituents, to better serve our economy, to make sure that we're creating those conditions for growth.
Yep, and getting government out of the way.
Getting government out of the way, and then creating those conditions where, small businesses, families, communities can thrive and decide in a lot of ways what's best for them.
Absolutely.
The people of Barrie love Barrie for this reason, and the people of London love London for this reason. And we want to make sure that we're letting them dictate almost their own communities.
Yeah, and you talk about government regulation. I'll give you a recent one that we I think just announced only a few weeks ago. Is downtown Barrie. We've got craft breweries. Flying Monkeys. Everyone knows them. We had Red Line Brewery. Yeah. We have Barnstorlers. I'm gonna forget few, so my apologies. We also just north of us have a lot of cideries. Yeah. As well. And so, we changed regulation of treating adults like adults. Right. And so being able to do wholesale pricing, but also allowing, these types of beers to be sold in our grocery stores. So there's more access to the product. And so it really helps them sell their product, and then more people can support local wherever they are. And so, these are things that we've liberated a little bit, but they've really helped that particular industry, and the ripple effects and the jobs it creates. They need to get their product to market. So they're hiring drivers, they're hiring more people in marketing, and it's jobs that are created here within our community.
Yeah, which is at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is try to build those communities, which includes, where you live, where you work, and where you play. And so having that all close to home is the goal, right? So we're not, I've done the commute to Toronto in years past, and it's not fun. So I can appreciate trying to build the situation in which we can do that. Yeah. Everything you need to do closer to home.
Absolutely.
If I switch gears a little bit and talked, you'd spoken a little bit about what you had done to, or helped to do in terms of expanding programming at Georgian College. Is there anything else that you think that the government, the education sector, can help to benefit the skilled trades in particular? Because that's something that, I think even Premier Ford has said, hey, look, we've got a shortage of skilled trades, and we need the men and women who are able to build the infrastructure, who are able to build the homes. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a two-pronged approach. As much as we're funding our post-secondary institutions, so Georgian College being an example, we're also expediting the approvals for courses. So because, it's just sitting on someone's desk collecting, dust, it's like they just want the course to be approved. And so case in point was now, Georgian College wasn't able to train nurses. Now they can. Right. So they're right beside RVH. It's just a no-brainer. It's good for our retention locally because then we get more of that skill. And so we're doing that with other professions. And so that's one angle of, especially the skills trades as well, is being able to leverage our post-secondary infrastructure like Georgian to fund some of that programming. But the flip side of that is just attracting people to the trades, because you can go and be an apprentice. So part of that is in our education system, changing the curriculum. My apologies, this thing is now silent. But changing our curriculum to encourage more young people to go into the trades. Like, I mean, you said you used to get on the highway, 400 yourself too, to go to work, and now you're be able to work locally. Well, if you say to, kids in school, if you love where you are, imagine if you get to the skills trades, you can work anywhere.
Right.
And you commute where you want to go. And if there's a job you don't like, you want to go do some work in Springwater, you say yes. So you can go do the, whether it's installing the flooring or the electrical or everything that's going to be needed, right? And so I think that wasn't enough awareness about that. So we did change the curriculum to bring more awareness to the skills trades. It's a meaningful profession. And it's really high paid. Yeah. So you talk about like the trade-offs on financial literacy. Well, part of financial literacy is also integrating with skills trades to say, okay, well, you can go to school, you're going to take out a loan, you're going to go get an education. But if you enter in the skills trades, you're basically making money right out of the gate. And so that appeals to certain students, and it gets them into that field. Yeah. But the other flip side of that, so it's, not only your post-secondary, your elementary and high school level, and then it's just skills training altogether. So we have the skills training development fund. And since we've launched the skills development fund, we've been able to, train about 600,000 individuals. 100,000 of those got jobs within like 20 days. And subsequent to that, about 1,000 plus change are going directly into the housing sector, building sector. And so that shows you that, government, we all have a finite of your taxpayer dollars. Yeah. But if we can invest in training people so that they're successful, that they have jobs, and they'll be contributing to the tax base, so win-win for everybody. Yeah. It's one of those investments where the dividends are priceless. And so this particular skills development fund has been successful for training more people into the jobs of the future and the current demand. And so whether it is a home building or a mining sector or what have you, it's showed that there are individuals out there that want to, if you were in hospitality for many years, so maybe you want to pivot and you want to do something else, but you still want that job that like allows you to be on your feet and mobile. And like some people don't want something sedentary all the time. Absolutely. It allows them to do that. Or in the flip side, I worked with an individual when I worked in finance, and they worked right beside me, and they hated that lifestyle. Right. And so they went back to school to be a paramedic. Right. Love it. Yeah. Right. And so these are things but it's hard to go back to school because it's time and money. But if you have a government that's investing in your training, it's a little easier to make that decision. Yeah.
And we want to make sure that people aren't feeling stuck. Hey, like it's that idea of we want to help our constituents to be able to build the life that they want, not necessarily feel trapped in, yes, I've got a degree in finance and I guess I have to stay here forever because it's too hard for me to switch. Whereas we also need paramedics, right? So being able to give that flexibility for individuals to say, hey, this is what I went to, but this is where I want to go. And, having some of those barriers taken away or mitigated to a certain extent so they can then change to be a paramedic. Because that's a great story. And we all need paramedics, and the healthcare industry, just like the home builders industry, needs help.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what we recognized, with what we were hearing, obviously, prior to some of they were going through a bit of a housing pause, right? With the economy the way it is, it's not because there is a demand for housing, but it's just the economy the way it is with inflation is, prior to being in the current situation we're in, is we heard a lot from the home building sector is we don't have enough people in the skills trades. Right. We don't have we've got all this work, but no one's going into it, and so that's where. We kind of wanted to have the foresight there to see what can we do to train more people and helping them pivot because the economy has, ebbs and flows. Yep. And then, how can we help people cross-train? So obviously we're not going to be the people that are cross-training government, again, getting government out of the way, but providing that funding and opportunity for other companies who are able to do that and train people, whether we're cross-training people so that if there's if it's slow here in construction, that skill is transferable somewhere else and making sure that those people have constant employment, right? So it's being nimble in that sense, but the Skills Development Fund has been really a good example of how we're, upskilling and training people in the skills.
Right, so that just like where, the goal I think is for the economy to be resilient, have less ups and downs, but, a steady growth. You want to train or help people to be resilient on the individual level. So we're looking macro and micro in terms of making sure that our economy is resilient for everyone, but also for the individual.
Yeah, and like I alluded to, they can, if you go into the trades, you can kind of move wherever you want, but we have to recognize, like Canada, people move across provinces. Yep. And so prior to, Premier Ford and our government winning the election back in 2018, if you were a Red Seal apprentice or a tradesperson in one province, it was really hard for you to go to another one.
Yeah.
And so something Ontario started leading a lot was, what can we do interprovincially to recognize different credentials? Yeah. And so now it's seamless. If you're, if you're in a skilled trade, you can move from Saskatchewan and start work in Ontario right away. Right. And now what we're building on and what they're working at the Ministry of Labour on is the safety training, because every province has different safety training, which actually makes it very unsafe, because you were used to one kind of code in Alberta, and now you're coming to Ontario, it's a whole different code, and that can create issues, absolutely. So
transportation industry, right? Yes. Because like the truck requirements here to here to here can be different as you travel through 3 provinces.
100%. Yeah, that's a great example. And so, if we can align them all, that will make it safer for the worker. And then again, we're mobile people, like people move for family reasons, for all kinds of different reasons. And so allowing that individual to hit the ground running right away, not only to work in Ontario, but then they don't have to worry about recertifying for some safety thing. Yeah. And if you're the employer, you just want that person to also work right away.
Yeah. No,
right. Time is money. So.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very interesting. And I think overall, like, you've got the right end goal, and you've got an approach that you're consistent with in varying different ways to get to that end goal, which is building that resiliency and giving people a choice in what the outcome is. I want to switch gears a little bit here. You represent a diverse area in Innisfil and Barrie, and even individuals who look the same from those 2 areas have very different preferences. So how do you manage that diversity within your own riding, and what to you does effective leadership mean when you're managing or representing a diverse area?
Yes, I would say that the biggest diversity, and you've likely seen this with different guests you've had and in your data breeding refression, is the rural urban. Yeah. And so it's often, like, as an MPP for Barrie-Innisfil, I represent both a rural community, which is Innisfil, growing quite quickly, and has some urban challenges, but is still rural. Yeah. And then Barrie, which is very urban, and I would say has an ambition to be even more urban. And so that dichotomy is is perplexing sometimes to be the representative, because oftentimes our own caucus is bucketed. They're like, oh, you're a rural Ontario caucus, or you're GTA caucus, and then there's me, and I'm like, well, I'm not quite GTA, but I'm also not quite Northern Ontario, right? And I'm a bit rural, but I'm also urban, and so it makes my job. I'm constantly it makes the advocacy part of the job more time consuming. Yes. Because you have to constantly re-explain yourself to different whether it's the housing envelopes for funding, or health, or police and fire. Like, the demands are very different. Yeah. And so I always have to remind my colleagues who are really capable individuals that, like, you have to look at my area a little differently. Right? It's just because you gave me funding for this thing, but I also have a rural part of my community, I also need funding. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it gives you an interesting perspective, because someone who's representing, if the boundaries were drawn like that, and I'm sure in some cases they are, where it's just an urban municipality, that individual's responsibility to represent their constituents is a lot different than someone who's representing a predominantly rural area. And so you have the perspective of being on both sides of the fence in some cases. So, like, for example, just for economic development, Innisfil will qualify for what's called, we rebranded it, but it used to be called the Rural Economic Development Fund. Yep. So the digital media zone is able to tap into these funds to help grow up this kind of a startup thinking culture, and it's worked really well. But Barrie can't apply to that. Right. But Barrie, through manufacturing, can apply for the Southwestern Economic Development Fund. Sure. So again, helps grow jobs. And one thing, we hear a lot from our, especially manufacturing, are like, okay, well, great, we're using the Southwestern Economic Development Fund to create 200 jobs. But Andrea, where are these people going to live? And so that's why it's like the two are always connected. Mm-hmm. As much as, like, we're funding the job creation and the training, ultimately when they come here, they need a place to live. Absolutely. And then it's like, okay, well, the housing is available, but it's too expensive. Right. So then that's kind of our employees locally. Yeah. that's stuff that they hear and they're struggling with as well. And so that's where it's like the home building piece and like creating the right conditions and getting rid of the red tape and having those like investments for infrastructure, they very much complement the entire growth of the city. And it just, for example, like, you know, Barrie's needs, different from Innisfil, again, is, you know, there's a great, like this cultural mosaic that has really increased since my time. Like I came here when I was 4. You know, we had Terra restaurant, Indian restaurant, downtown Barrie. That was probably our most ethnic like type of food. Yeah. Now it's great. You've got a Filipino restaurant. You've got Jamaican patties. You've got a Caribbean grocery store. You've got a halal grocery store. You know, the kosher chicken thing is, we're still working that out, but it's a work in progress. But, you know, you're seeing these aisles even in our grocery stores. They've really expanded. But with that, they want a place to celebrate their different cultural events. Yeah. We don't have it, or it's not big enough. Yeah. And so there's that infrastructure demand too. It's like, well, we're here, and we want to bring these festivals here locally, but we need the facilities. And so I know the city of Barrie's challenge with this, because the South Shore Center, I believe, is probably booked up almost every day.
Every hour, every day. Yeah.
So if it's not a baby shower or a graduation of a high school or an elementary school, it's going to be a Holi event or a Ramadan, you name it, right? Or just recently we celebrated Purim, and so I think that part of the growing community, the diversity that it does, like, you know, in terms of culture, is a big part of it too, because that will also dictate the infrastructure, right? Like Barrie, many years ago, we were fighting for an arts and culture center downtown 5 Points. That was our big thing. Like, we need a place for theater. Yeah. And it was like, that was a big demand. And so we've come so far from like just, you know, wanting local theater for Talk is Free and TIFF to, you know, where can we celebrate the next, holiday of a certain community.
And I think this is like a great illustration of just, you had said very early on in the conversation, you're balancing a lot of different things. So we've talked about healthcare, we've talked about housing, we've talked about cultural infrastructure needs. And so I think that helps to give our audience a lot of perspective, like, okay, yes, Andrea isn't ignoring my phone call. She's dealing with this and this and this, and she's trying to get everything done, which, you know, sometimes can feel overwhelming, I imagine, when you've got a lot of priorities that you're trying to fight for and work with. Yeah,
but the good thing is like we have a government, and like Premier Shore very much recognizes the building complete communities. So, you know, like sport is so important. Like I in the legislature, I sit beside the Minister of Sport. And so I'm always like, you know, elbowing him a little bit because he's a former football player, so he could take it. And I always say to him, you know, Neil, we have a great community. I need more sports fields. I need more recreation, right? And so you see that with what the city of Barrie is doing to expand recreation. Yeah. But there's also again, if you want people to come and live and buy a home in a community, where are they going to go to soccer practice or hockey or lane swim or take their kids for camp, right? And so, that in terms of infrastructure funding, the government also said, okay, well, we need to fund more of these recreation streams. Yep. So YMCA, they're on just where our Molson Center is. I still call it the Molson Center. Sadlin Arena. Apologies, sorry, Paul Sadlin family. That's a piece, but great community advocate. But the Paul Sadlin Arena, just next door to that will be the YMCA. Yeah. And the amount, because if you think about the amount of homes that were already built in the south end, the additional homes that are going to come online, thanks to the help of some of that infrastructure funding, but also our great home builders who are taking that, you know, it's a tough environment right now to build those homes, but they're still going at it, which is incredible. I'm utterly thankful because it's growing our community. But they'll know that just around the corner from them is going to be that YMCA, which is on track to be built within a year as well. And that hopefully will feature a daycare. They have space for it. It hasn't been approved yet. We're, you know, going back and forth with YMCA to be able to help them with that, the next hurdle. But in terms of the infrastructure funding, it's there. And so that's another piece of it of like, you know, people don't just like go home and close their door and they turn the lights on. Right. You know, I think in this economy too, it's like, well, thank God I have a roof over my head and I'm a homeowner. That's amazing. Yeah. But then once you achieve that home ownership, you want to know what else can you do? What's the what facility can I go to for my recreation or my shopping, etc. Yeah. And so it's that whole like complete community view our government has taken, where it's not just funding the underground infrastructure, which is important, and it's tough to cut a ribbon down there. Mm-hmm. But we heard like loud and clear from home builders, both on the residential side, but also builders on the commercial side, how vital that is. Yeah. And so we're following through, and always open to lots of ideas of how we can get homes built better, faster, and online.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard for people to see the progress. As you said, you don't do a ribbon cutting for infrastructure, but that's laying the groundwork for future growth and future development and the future homes of people for tomorrow. And that's, sometimes it's tough to celebrate that when it's less glamorous, we'll say.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good way to put it. But it's also bracing innovation, right? It's if you do the underground infrastructure, then, how you do bricks and mortars has changed. We've got modular home building. We've got some companies here locally in Simcoe County that do modular. Yeah. And, but, it's having government respond to that, within whether it's the building code or other regulations around government building. Yeah. How do we allow for a more nimble framework so you can build modular? Because in Simcoe, we love skiing and we love our outdoor winter sports here. Yeah. But what you can't always do over the winter months. You can't build homes every day. Right. I mean, I see the guys and gals out there, but it's not when there's certain things, conditions. Yeah. Ideal conditions. But if you can offset some of that into in doing some framing and some of that modular building, that helps with getting those houses online once the spring is there and the ground thaws, but also attracts, I think, from a labor perspective, a different type of person who wants to build homes, right? Because there's a niche there for individuals who really want to be in the trades, but they want to work in a different kind of environment.
Yeah, they want to show up to the same place every day. Yes. Versus traveling from site and then working on a different site. It's like, we can go build, do this framing in factory, and it gets sent out. All right, so very interesting. I have an off-topic fun question, but Honourable Andrea Khanjin, you're given a magic wand and you get to do whatever it is. What's kind of an obstacle or something that you'd like to wave your magic wand and fix or solve or point us in the right direction?
It's a really good question, and I often wish I had a magic wand in my office because some of the things I'm asked to do, I do everything in my team, and I have an awesome team. We try to do everything we can to help every individual, but sometimes we exhaust our resources and there's really nothing. But if I had a magic wand, I think something that would help everybody alike, no matter what industry you're in, no matter economic, where you are economically, is I would love to just get rid of this inflation issue we have. Because I think that, I was just talking to someone who has a, pretty good paycheck, but even they're noticing grocery prices. Yeah. That's the one thing. We all need groceries. Yep. We cannot not eat. And it's sad to see people in our community hurting. Yeah. And that's all because of inflation. Right. I remember when apples were $3.99 a pack. Yep. They are $8.99, $6.99 on a good day. Yeah. And so that's just that it's not sustainable. Right. And so if I did have that magic wand, it's not necessarily the provincial creating. Right. It's a different level of government on inflation. But if that magic wand applied to anything, I think that would help everyone. It means talked about with just at the beginning of this podcast, if more people have more money left over, they're investing that into their community, they're shopping locally, businesses are expanding. It's whatever you can do to have someone have a little more money left over at the end of their paycheck, it creates better communities, in my opinion. Yes. So the inflation piece, I would love to nip that in the bud, get rid of it, and so then prices could just come down.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I think it's a fantastic answer. Again, I very much appreciate you coming in today and spending some time with us to get your perspective. I think we nailed it.
Don't think it. Well, look at that. Give me a hammer, I'll start building the homes. But I'm not certified, so I might get Minister of Labor.
Yeah, we don't want to get anyone into any trouble. So I appreciate your time. Women in trades. If you are interested in becoming a guest or sponsoring an episode of our podcast, please reach out to podcast@schba.ca. I always struggle with that acronym.
So it's a good one, though. It's very important. Thank you for everything the Simcoe County home builders do. I rave about the Youth Haven project to everyone I know. Yeah. And it's just an incredible group of individuals I get to work with here. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you.